line.
GiantKiller.co and the By George Podcasting Network present the By George Podcast with Brian Lawrence and Chris Jones. The original George Mason basketball podcast.
They're on their feet. Here, Hancock! Oh! Off the top of the backboard, no. Loose, Hancock, front court, Johnson. One Mason point, George Mason.
By George, we are back. And not only are we back, we got an upcoming season ahead of us. Woo. We got a brand new coach. We got like 35 new players. This is the time to hone in and get acclimated with Mason basketball as we got a season up ahead. And there's no better guest in the world to do this with than Tony Skinn. And we got him on here right now. Tony, say what's up to Mason Nation.
Mason Nation, what's going on, man? It's glad to be back. I'm super excited. Can't wait to see what the future holds, man. I'm super glad to be back.
Brian Lawrence and I'm here with Chris Jones. Chris, I want to hear just kind of your take, your excitement. Obviously, a fan during multiple runs. What's your take when you first heard that coach got the job?
So yeah, it was a dream come true. I mean, I think if you asked any Mason fan who they would want. Out of anybody in the country, we wanted one of our own. So whenever Tony's name came up and we started pushing that, I think we were pretty much we had our blinders on, like we just wanted Tony Skinn. And I'm so thankful that we were able to get him as the 12th head coach of George Mason. Now, since March 30th, Tony, it's been an absolute whirlwind. You were, coaching, over at Maryland as an assistant. You get a call. What's it been like since March 30th till now, late September? You've built a staff, you've built a roster. You've had to do the opening presser. What's it been like, over the last few months?
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, man. It's just been just several stages of going through this thing, trying to, learn as much as possible on the fly. I remember when I got the job, obviously I was excited when I got that call from George Mason, transitioning from the NCAA tournament. There was a lot of things going on in College Park, but once I got that call, I really just started focusing on, well, if you get this job, this is your opportunity to, get your first job. But more importantly, this is your alma mater. This is home. And like you mentioned earlier, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people have kind of been waiting on this moment where we kind of went back to what I would call the originator, which is the Coach L tree. And just being in that position to, over the last couple of years of my career, things have just kind of gone, in my favor. I wanted that opportunity, but more importantly, I wanted to be as ready as possible, given the state of our roster. And that was one of the first things that I did. You go from trying to prep from, your hotel, trying to prep in a hotel for your presser, and then getting out of the presser, and then finally, the buzz dies down a little bit, and you go into your office, and you're like, I got to put a roster together, and I got to go get 10 guys. It's just a lot of different things that I knew, given the opportunity, I was slightly ready for. I knew my staff. I knew who I wanted to hire for the most part. I think the only person staff-wise that I didn't think was going to leave was Steve Kern from St. Bonaventure, who's been up there for such a long time, well-respected coach in the league. St. Bonaventure has done a lot with little, and getting on the phone with him, it was a little bit of a reach. But he wanted something different. He came down, interviewed, and once I got him on board, and I'll get into kind of the guys that we ended up having to get. I was impressed by Coach Kern just because, I was making calls, trying to get, different guys in the portal, trying to just get a feel of what they were trying to do. And for some reason, St. Bonaventure just kept coming up. And I'm like, who the hell is recruiting, all these kids from St. Bonaventure? And right when I got Steve's information, because I didn't know him, It ended up being Coach Steve. And so that impressed me a lot. And like that's just kind of how this thing goes from day one till I guess you could say day 10.
So you're telling me you didn't know Steve prior to all of this? Like
I did
you
not
didn't
know.
have. Wow.
I did
Okay.
not. I had my I knew Coach Mike. Obviously I knew Coach Lewis. Obviously Lamar Butler. Coach Mark, I did not know when I originally hired for that position. The guy came and just left, but Coach Mark, I knew a little bit. But outside of those guys, I did not know Coach Steve.
Did someone put you on? Did you strategically want someone that was from the A10? Like how did
Yes. I wanted to be strategic because again, you get your first job, man. I made the mistake of going to the Final Four, but I had to go because I wanted to interview a few people. You get bombarded. And when I say bombarded, it's an understatement because it's such a hard business and everybody wants a chance. And when you're connected and different people, it's hard to actually understand that they think their way into the business is through their relationship with you. That was a lesson learned. But yes, I went down to Houston and I did not know Coach Steve, but he came highly recommended through a couple people that we know mutually. And I just liked his profile. I did want somebody that had experience in this league. That was my biggest thing. And not just somebody that had experience, but somebody that had, some success with where they were. And he checked off that box. He's a veteran. He's been coaching, longer than all of us on his staff. And I just thought that type of experience would be good for me in year one.
We think that's a slam dunk hire. And so, I got a chance to watch a practice and a couple summer, whatever they're called. And I noticed that he was really working the bigs. And I know that he worked big work with St. Bonaventure as well. Is that like, what have you seen in him, that compares to other big men coaches? Because, I feel like we got some good size. I'm excited to see how we use them. What's he kind of bringing on a day-to-day in practice?
Again, he's done a tremendous job of just building relationships with our guys. Again, when you put together such a new team, bunch of different personalities, bunch of different guys that, come from different programs, having a guy that's experienced that guys can trust is the first thing. But more importantly, man, even at his old age, like he's out there getting active. Obviously I consider myself a younger coach and the rest of my staff were fairly young. He's kind of the veteran, but when you come watch a practice, you really can't tell the difference. And I think there's a big trust factor when you got a guy that's grinding, not a guy that's just standing there and pointing and saying, hey, do this, do that. Like he's getting active in those drills. And I saw that in the first couple of workouts. And in my mind, I get active as well. But I was able to just kind of take a step back and say, you know what, this guy has done it. He's done it at that position, especially. And I trusted with him. And so far, so good.
And so with Lewis and Mike, you kind of alluded to the fact that you knew that they were going to be, a part of your staff, like right from the get-go. What was it about them that you knew that, they were going to just up and leave their current roles? Like, and then what kind of plan did you have for them? Like, you're going to have someone as like a recruiter, or did you want to have someone as, X's and O's? Like, so how did you view them?
Well, I over the years, I built a really good relationship with Mike Econon. Mike he was previously just at Sam Houston State as an assistant. He was actually headed elsewhere, and I won't say where, through that transition. He was there for about 10 days. And when I gave him a call, it was a 50-50 decision for him. I've been impressed with him prior to getting his job just because, he's worked at Texas A&M with Buzz Williams. He's worked at Arkansas and Nevada for Eric Musselman. And he's also worked at Memphis with Josh Pastner, and he spent some time with the Spurs as well. A guy that can survive in those places, in those environments at that level, brings a lot to the table. And he's a guy that we've always had different conversations, different basketball conversations, and he had a lot of roles and a lot of responsibilities at each and every one of those programs. And I like that profile, and he has a good reputation of being someone that can recruit nationally. The thing about George Mason, but also the A10 in general, I think it's a place that you can really recruit nationally. We all know the DMV is rich with talent, but given the academic profile, given playing in a major city, given a really good league that you can play in other major cities, I think that becomes very, very attractive to not just guys within our region, but also guys outside of that region. And proof of that is, one of our guys that we do have committed. I can't say his name, but we do have committed in the 2024 class. And so I was confident with what Mike was able to do and his experience with the previous coaches that he's worked under. And then Lewis Hinnock, for me, it was just one of those things where I've always respected Lou. Lou's been a part of a very, very successful program. That's been his only stop. But I also needed somebody who was respected in the DMV that could not necessarily take some things off of me, but just additional help as well in the DMV, because now I'm going from, being that top assistant that's recruiting, that's doing a whole bunch of different things, but a whole bunch of other responsibilities now come with that. And just having someone who can kind of get the same thing done in this region that, it's going to be 75% of our recruiting. Coach Lou brought that to the table. He was a high-level player at Boston College. He's well-respected in the area. And I was just confident that, within all of that, from a basketball standpoint, I knew the personalities would fit, if that makes sense. A lot of times you have different people that, get assimilated on staffs and different things that might not always make sense. And guys end up just being kind of just doing their own thing. I mean, we've been, one of the things I've been impressed with, not just my guys on the floor, but also my staff. There's, I can't say more than enough about how good we've been as a staff so far.
I love to hear it, and it's just to think about, all that you've kind of accomplished in a short amount of time only gets us more excited for the season. I think we're pretty excited about the staff. We're excited about the players that you brought in. And now that I've kind of seen 3 practices, I have some questions, and I want to kind of dive into the players. And before I think we can do that, I think it's important to better understand your scheme, not in a way that would obviously be a disadvantage to you later on, but just in a basics X's and O's. So if I ever go too far, if I just tell me to be quiet, Brian, just stop talking. But I do have based on what I've seen, I do have a couple questions.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of establish the direction you want to go on the court, we're going to kind of go into the players and see how they're going to fit and mix.
Yeah.
Patriot pressure, definitely something that if you follow By George, that we've really wanted to have. I think there's some jealousy to Havoc in VCU, and just watching that for so many years, it's just you kind of want to have that too. And so I'm wondering, nobody really understands what type of pressure is that. 3/4 court? Is that half court zone? Is it full court man? Is it all of the above? And it's just Patriot pressure is just a umbrella for all different types of looks. What is our a Tony Skinn pressure defense going to look like?
You kind of hit it on the head in your last statement. I think Patriot pressure is just an overall umbrella of what I want this program to be. Obviously, that starts on the floor with the way that our guys compete. From a basketball scheme standpoint, we are going to press. I don't mind saying it's going to be a 2-2-1 press. That's one of the things that I learned along the way. And just given the type of depth that we have and the way we recruited, initially, I wasn't sure if I wanted to press. But if you look at the guys that, we've been able to put together on this staff, I think from a depth standpoint, being able to manage those guys and get those guys on the floor, you are going to see a press. Now, again, we're not going to be pressing the whole game, but we're going to be pressing and playing and creating energy based off our defense. Offensively, I am going to give these guys a little bit more freedom than I think you've probably seen in the last couple of years here at George Mason. When you recruit the type of guys that I've been able to get out of the portal, guys from this area, you got to be able to give those guys some sort of offensive freedom. But within that, hold them accountable defensively, and that's what you're going to see.
I love to hear that, and I want to kind of expand on that a little bit, because something that kind of the former coach would say is that he gave guys 8 or so seconds. He had a time frame. They had this much time to create, and then it went to a play. I'm kind of curious on what you mean by flexibility in the offense, and then also based on something I saw, it seemed to me like there's going to be an emphasis on moving without the ball to create points and to get buckets. And that's, we settled for a lot of threes. Not settled's not the right word. We took a lot of threes in the past couple of years. So I'm wondering, like, I'm kind of seeing an emphasis on attacking the bucket. So, kind of a 2-point question there. And then I think we're going to get into the players.
Yeah, I think, we want to be aggressive, just like anybody else. We do want to try to score in the first 8 seconds. I think that's the point of the game. But when we don't have that advantage, we want to use spacing. We want to be able to touch paint. We want to be able to play off of each other. Freedom doesn't mean that we're going to just be helter-skelter. I think that the personality and the IQ of this team, you're going to have a chance to see guys that can play in the ball screen, make reads for each other, make reads for themselves. And so you'll see a lot of driving, you'll see a lot of passing, you'll see a lot of ball screens. We'll be able to throw the ball inside. I think the last couple of years, and credit to the previous staff with Josh Aduro, I think that they were very, very, in a sense, one-dimensional, where the ball went inside a lot. We want that as well. But I think we have some really, really good perimeter players. If you look at our personnel as we'll go through it, we've got a chance to be able to play inside out as well.
And real quick, have you modeled your offense, around anything or anybody that you've, worked with in the past? Is there someone that influences, your current offensive style?
Yeah, it's a culmination of, my first stop was at Louisiana Tech with Eric Conkle, who gave me my first opportunity. So I learned a lot in those 3 years. And then I was able to transition to Seton Hall for those 3 years, and then spent the year in Ohio State, and then right back at Maryland with Kevin Willard. And so for me in my brain, it's a combination of those guys that I worked with and worked for, but also a combination of some of my personal experiences as a player, playing internationally, playing at George Mason. It's a culmination of all that. And so hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
And so, like, if we're going to look at, the story of Tony Skinn right now, and from the moment he was hired, we already went through, the staff that you assembled, and then, sort of the brand of basketball that you want to play. I think we should next get into, the roster construction, because you arrive and there's essentially 3 to 4 players that you inherit. What is it like to essentially build a roster from the ground up? Something that you can shape and mold and get guys that you want to play a particular style. What is it like to kind of come in and again, 3 to 4 guys and know that you have to get 10 guys, before October?
Yeah, it wasn't, I would say, looking back at it, it happened so fast. And it felt like it was easy just because it happened so fast. It wasn't easy at all, because again, in my mind, I knew the type of team that I wanted. I knew the type of system that I want to run. Again, we talk about Patriot pressure. You can't have Patriot pressure if you don't have the personnel that fits that or matches that. And so getting in the portal and having a chance to recruit different guys, we were fortunate. I got to give credit to my staff. All 3 of those guys, I mean, they worked the lines to where it was one of those things where, given the style of play and what needed to fit, we said no to some guys, and we were able to really bring in the guys that I thought fit what I'm trying to do here. If you want me to go into detail about every guy, I can. Do we want to transition now, or?
Yeah, and I think first let's just highlight the guys that returned. Okay. I think it speaks a lot to who they are, and I'm specifically wanting to point out Malik and Ronald, who have now been at Mason through 3 coaches. I mean, coaches. You're the third. Yeah, you're their third coach. I don't know if that's ever even happened at Mason before. So to us, like, those guys are like dedicated Patriots through and through. Like, them deciding to come back meant a whole lot to, I think, the fan base. And so just kind of, touch on what it meant to get them to return, obviously getting Dinkins, and then, you also had Austin Ball, recommit, I guess. What was it like to sort of bring in those guys from the previous regime?
Yeah, no, I mean, credit to those 3 guys. And if you add Austin in there, those 4 guys, because we live in a landscape where, I mean, I know you just said that's never happened in Mason. That doesn't happen anywhere. Any chance that guys get a chance to vote and just kind of go somewhere else and see something different, they do it. That's what the portal has become. And, you know, both, Ronald Polite, obviously Malik and Dev Dinkins, you know, they could have bolted out the door, but that was my first, as many calls as I was making, trying to fill the other positions. I had to try to build the relationship as organic and as fast as possible with those guys. And my message to those guys were clear. You know, you look around the room, there's a lot of real estate and a lot of new guys that are going to have to come in and learn so much. You guys know the place. You guys know the culture of as far as the university is concerned, but you guys also know and understand the grass is never greener on the other side. You know, this place is different for me than it was for the coaches that you guys have played for. No disrespect to those guys, but you know, this place raised me. We wouldn't be here if I didn't go to George Mason. And I think that message to those guys, they were familiar with me. Obviously, they're familiar with the history that we've had. It was really easy to sit down and talk to those guys. You know, you kind of, when you go through a situation like this, you got to get to know those guys. It's like the first stage, and then you got to like re-recruit them, and then continue to re-recruit them. But I felt like after our first conversation that I had with those guys individually, those guys like showed up right away and just started working. And I think the work, and then gaining trust with not just myself, but with my staff, they bought in and they stayed home, something that just doesn't happen. So I got to give those guys a lot of credit. And the same goes to Austin Ball. You know, we had, I believe, 3 guys, or was it 4? My numbers in my head is just all over the place now with how many guys we had to kind of figure out. I think it was 3. No, it was 4. Austin was one of 4 committed, I believe. And I had my conversations with those guys, and you know, they chose to do something different. But Austin, you know, he stayed home. He's an easy guy to have a conversation with. And my first conversation with him, you know, I thought he was just like, you know, pretending to be this high energy, just super conversational freshman. But from that first conversation till now, you know, I mean, he's by far the biggest energy on this team as a freshman, and I love that about him, and I love that for our program. He's been phenomenal for a freshman.
Yeah, that's a kid that, you know, I've seen play at the Capital Classic. Someone that, you know, is close enough to from here. You know, it's like it's nice to.
We saw him at homecoming. I mean, I actually legitimately think, yeah, Austin Ball like loves Mason. Like so I think he was just super stoked to commit and come. So you know, we're excited to have Ball. But yeah, I mean, we don't get like a lot of West Virginia, you know, kids ever. So,
Yeah,
like, it's kind of unique.
Yeah, I'm excited to get kind of into the guys, you know, the other guys that you brought in. Not to talk about the returning guys a lot, but just, you know, we know a good amount about them. Jared Billups, I believe your first commit here, a guy that on tape shows versatility, super strong on the defensive end, can get to the bucket. Tell us a little bit about him and where you see him fitting.
Yeah, no, Jared's been, you know, you talk about pressing, you know, he's going to be right at the head of that press. From a defensive standpoint, he's a defensive, just a specimen physically. You know, he's got the speed. He understands the game. He understands who he is. But then offensively, I think that, you know, he had a slight injury that kind of affected him offensively, shooting the basketball last year and a half or so at Siena. He's now healthy, and so you watch him in practice, you know, mechanically, I mean, he's making threes, and so he's a guy that I think he's going to be able to raise his level from a personal standpoint and be able to help this team. He's a leader, he's vocal, and so far so good with him.
Yeah, we heard that he has you know, that dog in him, apparently. Like, he's just a scrappy, you know, will bang with anyone. So yeah, was it you know, just a coincidence that he was the first get, or was there something specifically about him that you were like, you know, I need him, you know, and you know, as the first domino, and the rest will fall after?
When you have 10 or 9 or 10 scholarships to fill, there's no scheme. It's just, I wouldn't say first come, first serve. It's, you know, he's a guy that I think is a great piece, and it wasn't one of those things where it was Jared Billups versus somebody else. You know, there's 9 roster spots. That's a lot of real estate. And I just think it was a sliding scale of, you know, when we had him on campus, when other programs had him on campus, us prioritizing him and him just kind of seeing where the opportunity was. These guys aren't freshmen. They're not in high school. They've been through this process before. And it's just very, very, very easy for them to see kind of the window of what makes sense in that portal. So he was just a guy just coincidentally that committed to us, I guess you could say first.
Yeah, and we were super proud to get him because we knew who else was in the running, and to beat that other school meant a hell of a lot to us. So that was a big get. What about next up, Woody Newton? Another Maryland product. I know, he just received his waiver, and he came from Oklahoma State. He's big. He's versatile. What are your thoughts on Woody? How do you plan on deploying him?
He is a guy that I have no idea. Like, I watched a few practices. Like, I don't know. He's like almost the tallest guy on the court, and it's just like, where does this guy fit in?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch at Oklahoma State, I want to say he started over 20 games. He's a guy you can really plug at a lot of different positions. You look at his length at 6'8", 6'9". From a defensive standpoint, I mean, he doesn't even have to do much. All he has to do is just stand there and spread his arms around. But his versatility is going to allow him to help us, on both ends of the floor. I had a previous relationship with Woody. I recruited him the first time around when he initially went to Syracuse, and I was at Seton Hall. And that's how some of these things just kind of happen. He obviously had an unfortunate situation that brought him home. And the timing of everything, once he put himself in the portal, the timing of everything just kind of clicked. But again, he's a 4-year guy. He's been a part of some really good programs, some really respectable programs. He knows how to play. I think he's got to make another jump just from a leadership standpoint, because he's had a role that I think doesn't fit who he is, at least in the places that he's been. But I think that he's had a really, really good 3 weeks. And I'm going to, expect for him to continue to just get better to be able to help us.
Keyshawn Hall. There was obviously some buzz on him during the recruiting process. A guy that obviously can score at multiple levels. He seems like if he catches it on the perimeter and his decision's already made up that he can get that he's going to the bucket, that he's going to get to the bucket. And then he also has like a little three as well. He seems to knock him down at a good clip. So curious about Keyshawn Hall, probably the guy I'm personally most excited for, as both watching and following the process.
Keyshawn was I saw Keyshawn for the first time 2 years ago when I was at Ohio State. I went to go watch another kid that was committed to us. He's an Ohio kid, obviously, and he's playing on, forget the name of the AAU team. And I just remember this 6'7" kid. At the time, he was probably 285, 290, but he was the best player on the floor. And I just remember walking away from that like, man, that kid's talented, man. He's got to figure some things out as far as his body's concerned, but he's got a chance. Didn't think about Keyshawn Hall for, 20 months. And then I get the job, and then I see his name in the portal, and I'm like, this is intriguing. Let's dig. And one thing led to another. He showed up on his visit, and the kid was down 60 pounds. And just so for me, from his versatility, how skilled he is, the dedication it takes for somebody while in college to be able to shred those type of pounds, he was definitely for me a no-brainer. And like you alluded to earlier, he was being recruited at a high level out of the portal. And I think he made the decision to come to George Mason because he saw the opportunity, not only just the playing time, but just really an opportunity to continue to just develop as a basketball player, but also a young man. And we were able to, win that battle. And I mean, he's, to me, as he continues to learn and we continue to just get better collectively as a team, he's a mismatch nightmare at 6'7", because he's really a big guard that can do pretty much everything. He'll have a chance to, post up. He'll have a chance to do some things on the perimeter. You put him at the elbow and, in the ISO situation, there's not a lot of guys in this league at his position that's going to be able to stay in front of him. So I'm really excited about him.
Yeah, we were impressed by his tape. He was a big man that moved sort of like a point guard, or he just had the moves of someone that was 5'10". So the slimming down, is that something that he's trying to do for himself? Is he trying to become more versatile as a player? Is he is this a strategic thing, or is he just trying to be healthy? Like, what do you
No,
see?
I think it's just I want to be a pro thing. You know, when you're 6'7", 285, and you're out there, dominating guys, I think it's like that light bulb clicks. Like, hey, if I can get in better shape and look the part and be able to move a little bit better and have a little bit more pop, it's hard to just dedicate yourself to that. And so I think that was all him. And he's kept that weight since being with us. He's starting to put a little bit more weight on, which I think is a good thing, because he's going to be, as physical as he is, I think he's going to need those extra pounds that we can now turn into some muscle. He's down to, I think he's at like 230 now. So I like the weight that he's at. He's just got to continue to just take care of his body, and continue to grow just in all facets of his game.
Trey Wood, I saw him in practice, and he took his jersey off, and that man is like ripped, like he's about to be a bodybuilder on this. Like if he could do like the backwards flex and with extra spray tan. That guy, I was shocked. I was like, is this guy a basketball player? And so, I was curious, where he fits in, because, there seems to be a bit of a log jam at point guard. It's to my opinion, probably some of the best competition you'll see is for that spot, or those however many spots they're going to play. And Trey Wood is a guy, obviously, we were in on early when he was coming out of high school. And so, I'm curious, is he going to get clock? And at the same time, he seems like he's a guy that can create and can use his speed and his athleticism to get to where he wants to go.
No doubt. Trey is Trey's old as hell to start with. I coached Trey, and so did Coach. I coached Trey as I was transitioning from coaching AAU and getting my first college job at La Tech. So there was a pre-existing relationship there. And then he also played for Coach Lamar Butler while he spent some time at St. John's before going over to Paul VI. And so we were very, very familiar with Trey. Like you mentioned, he's one of those guys. And again, as you start to put this thing together, it's hard to really say, hey, I'm going to have a point guard or a guard logjam problem. You're working with non-scholarships. You got to put your roster together. And a lot of times in this business, especially for not a first-time head coach, but when you take over a program, especially that late and you're getting in the portal, most coaches won't say it. I will. When you have 9 scholarships, coaches are going after 2 or 3 dudes that are priority, that can really help them. And then those other 6 or 7 guys, it almost becomes a game of, you got to take what you can get and build from there. That's not the case with George Mason and what we did. And Trey Wood is a perfect example of that. I think, he's one of those kids. You talk about getting in the paint. There's not a lot of people that can stay in front of Trey Wood. We got to continue to just kind of help him navigate his pace a little bit and just changing his speed. But he's fast twitch. He'll be a guy. He'll be a guy at the top of that press. And I just imagine, Trey Wood and a Jared Billups at the front of a 2-2-1 press. That's Patriot pressure. And so far so good with Trey. He's got to continue to do some things to just kind of help himself. But we do have the depth. But as fast as we're going to play, guys are going to need some breaks. And I'm confident that we'll be able to try to manage the minutes for those guys, including Trey.
And then one of the other early gets from the staff, Amari Kelly, a veteran presence, coming by way of UNCW. What do you see him bringing this year at the 5? Obviously brings, minutes and just, a veteran mindset. What do you, I didn't want to use that word, but what do you see from Amari, for this year?
No, I mean, a veteran mindset, you hit it on the head. I mean, you win with age. This is another guy that's a 5th-year guy. Another guy that's been in the league, earlier in his career, kind of went away and he figured it out at UNC Wilmington. I don't think his numbers does him any justice. He averaged about 9 and 6 in like 22 minutes, but was very, 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 very efficient in those touches. And I would say through our 8 weeks collectively as a staff, we've been really, really impressed with him. He's skilled. He's a lefty. He's got great touch. When you look at him, he doesn't necessarily have the girth that you would see in some other fives, but around that rim, he's super active and he's able to do some things with his skill set where he can stretch the floor. He's able to shoot the basketball. So you'll see him. You'll see him at the 5, but you'll see him at the 4 a little bit as well.
And when you're talking about him playing at the 4, how does that kind of fit as far as having 2 bigs on the floor at the same time? We've seen a little bit of that in recent years, but it wasn't something that we saw under Paulson at all. So I'm just kind of curious, how is that does anything change in the offense when you go to that 2 big lineup, or is it still kind of flowing the same?
Nothing changes. I'm comfortable with putting him at the 4 just because he is that skilled and he is able to make decisions. He kind of knows himself. He's not a guy that's going to try to do too much because, he's typically a big. And sometimes when you put those bigs in the perimeter, there's just a little bit lost in the sauce. He's got maturity. He understands the position and he just allows me from a flexibility and trying to make sure I get these other guys minutes. Thankfully, he is skilled enough to do both.
Nico, let's keep it in the realm of the centers. A guy that really can rock the rim. Like, it looks very effortless. His forearms are above the rim on like every dunk. A guy that also shows like athleticism, not like a slow 5. As mentioned, wanting to get him and Malik on the floor. Are we going to see kind of a rotation of those 3 bigs at the 5?
Yeah, no, for sure. Nico's definitely, at his size, at his length, at 6'10", he's what I would say you see at the Power 5 level. He's got bounce, he's got twitch, he's a rim protector. He's got some things that he's got to continue to learn. I think that he's a guy that, you throw him in the game and he might go make a play that just kind of sends and gets everybody off their feet. And so as we continue to get better as a team, I'm hoping he can just kind of pick up some things. He hasn't been playing basketball for so long in the States. And so he's still moving the needle and just kind of learning, not just hoops, but, our system. But he's got a chance, man. He's athletic. He's probably got a 7'1", 7'2" wingspan. And we have days in practice when he just does something and everybody just starts looking at each other like, holy smoke. So I'm excited about him.
Let's keep with the international flavor. Baraka out of Canada is the sort of the lone freshman that your staff personally targeted. Our recruiting guy, David, loved his game, went and saw him a few times over the summer. What do you see as, a role for him being a freshman, wanting to get him minutes and some exposure, but obviously understanding that, there's a lot of veterans on this roster. So what do you think about Baraka and how do you want to use him this year?
Yeah, no, it's funny. We talked about, Jared being the first guy that we had committed. I want to say Baraka was probably the first guy who gave us a commit. And, with the way he played, because he was originally in the 2024 class, and with the way he played through the summer, he took us through hell and back in that commitment process. We couldn't comment on it. We couldn't talk about it. We were we were at the edge of our seats for, what felt like the whole summer. And that was a good thing, just because he was being recruited at a high level because he showed so much talent. And typically guys like that late, you don't get them at this level. He's mature for his age. He doesn't play and doesn't do things like a freshman. So I do think that IQ is going to give him, a chance. Again, he's another guy that can play both guard positions. You got a bunch of guys that are interchangeable, and I think that just helps us. I don't want to have a guy that's, just a point guard, or a guy that's just, a 2. It just makes it a lot harder to get those guys in rotations and give them minutes. But, he's been, I would say he's been spectacular in practice thus far. He's young, man. He's got fresh legs. Some of these other guys are a little bit older, so I don't know if that's what it is, but he's definitely got the juice. He's got the pop. He makes plays for himself. He can, make plays for others. And, I'm super excited, about him.
Love to hear that.
Yeah, he
So
definitely has a pop. He definitely has pop to him. One thing I saw in practice is that seems pretty explosive, and can jump, can get to where he needs to go. And he's got good size for a point guard. So I'm definitely you say, is he act like a freshman ever? Or is that just kind of his demeanor? Are you seeing
And
this?
the kid is I mean, and he just turned 18 a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two ago. So he's not one of those, older freshmen, but he's got an old soul. He's very mature. He's a leader. That's one of the things that we watched early in the summer and fell in love with throughout. The rest of the summer while he was playing on the circuit. It was not easy, man. Watching him, recruiting him, knowing that he's coming to us, but then watching the other coaches just kind of like, yo, who is this kid? Just because he just showed that much. Just a natural floor general that can really do pretty much everything on the floor, even from an offensive standpoint, and even defensively, he gets after it.
Yeah.
Jalen Haynes, guy was rocking pigtails, bullying people, definitely player that I can't personally give a Mason comparison to. In my time of being a fan, if you could give a comp to any player that you've kind of been around, that you can, he just when I've seen him in practice, just kind of like the bull in the china shop, just watch out. And he kind of
that's a good
play tight ends, in my opinion, when watching this guy. So I'm
curious,
what do you think?
that's a good way to put it, man. And I don't want to take shots at my guy, man. It's one of my best friends in the world. I don't mind doing this because this is all love on this podcast. But I think in a post, he if I could compare him to anybody in the last 15 years, and again, I might just be, I don't want to discredit anybody. When you throw the ball inside to him, you're confident that something good is going to happen, and you better get out the way. And the last time I can think of somebody like that, it was Ja Lewis. When he's got his back to the basket and he's using, his lower body to kind of do what he wants, it usually ends well. And so far, it's been a nightmare for our guys that have had to guard him. But he's a load, man. I mean, he's versatile as well. I mean, he's able to now catch it on the perimeter, and he can do some things. Again, he has to learn some things within our system. But he's a guy that, when we stretch the floor and we're going 5 out and he's at the top of the key, whoever that other 5 man is, he's going to be in trouble. So he's been a guy that's it's been easy to coach him just because of how hard he plays. He was the one guy that showed up to all his Kenner League games because he's that competitive. He loves to talk junk, but it comes from a positive space. But I'm excited about him. Obviously, we got Woody's waiver, and we're just kind of waiting on NCAA to make that decision so we can just kind of see where he fits in with us in our rotation.
All right. Well, last and certainly not least, let's talk about Darius Maddox, player that had success at Virginia Tech. I know he, when choosing, in the transfer portal, there were other bigger name, programs involved. What does his veteran leadership bring to this team? What should Mason Nation know about Maddox, and are you excited to coach him up?
I can't believe you guys waited to the last guy that asked me about Darius Maddox. No,
it was strategic.
It was strategic. Well, I mean, again, this is a guy that I recruited him at Seton Hall. Came down to Seton Hall in Virginia Tech. I was pissed at him when he didn't come to Seton Hall. The plan was for him to come and replace, arguably the best guard that the Big East has seen in a long time, which was Miles Powell. He would have had a chance to play alongside Miles for a year and then really have a chance to come in behind him. And, he said no to me. But we stayed in contact. I have a really, really good relationship with his mom and dad. And when I originally took the job, as he was departing Virginia Tech, I wouldn't say it was easy. It was just one of those things like, man, you said no to me once, man. This is a completely different seat. You can't say no to me again. I know he took a visit to a certain program in our league, actually maybe 1 or 2 programs in our league. But when he took his Penn State visit, I was a little worried for 48 hours because I think he's that good. Any guy that can make, almost 63s in the ACC, I think it's pretty safe to say that he can help you in the A10. He's been to 2 NCAA tournaments. He's fast twitch. He's getting better with making, doing something different than he's done in the past with the ball, give him a chance to play make a little bit. But when you watch him in practice, if the guy's got time and space, and sometimes even when he doesn't have time and space, it's good chances going in. So I'm excited about him. He's been phenomenal. He's got to make a jump as a leader because again, this is his 4th year, but we've got an older group, and he's right there at the nucleus of it.
He had a block on Malik that on the day 1 of practice that was pretty insane. We got it on film. I think it was even already posted somewhere. Showed his athleticism, which I don't think like that in my 3 times I really picked up on. Like, it seems like I don't know if you remember a Sherrod Wright.
Yes, I do remember Sherrod. Yep.
Kind of very similar to me in a very brief observation. Just kind of
much better shooter.
Okay. That's good to hear. I would say that, I haven't seen his athleticism until that play. And It was like sneaky. It looked so effortless, and he was definitely higher than Malik. And it was just like, he just like pinned it on the backboard.
Yeah, no, I think that's he's done that a couple of times now. And he's starting to show that he's got other facets of his game that I think is untapped. He's having a chance now to have a bigger role, and so he's buying into it. And I know the exact play that you're talking about, and that was like the 3rd time he did it, and we're looking at each other as a staff like, that's a winning play. Those are winning possessions, and he's obviously been a part of a good program. And anytime you have a chance to have a guy like that on your roster with that type of experience doing those type of things, it makes you feel good about what you have.
This has been awesome. We just went through every player in a good amount of time. That was complete in-depth analysis on our entire roster, which is almost brand new. I do have a couple follow-up questions as more of like a whole, and then we're going to let you get out of here. I'm curious about the 2-2-1. My arm hairs stood up when you said Trey Wood and Jared Billups. That's Patriot pressure. I mean, that we're going to tweet that out immediately. And so, like, I'm curious, like, how does a roster of our size fit into a press style? Like, it seems like bigger guys. Are we fast enough? Does the 2-2-1 allow you to play more stationary? That how does like a team of our size and makeup fit the 2-2-1 that you're looking to run?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that can be a little bit misleading is when you hear 2-2-1, you're thinking just all out press, just all out pressure. And in doses, you're going to see that. But our 2-2-1 is going to be a combination of we'll get after it when we need to get after it. But for the most part, you're going to see a 2-2-1 that kind of, transforms into a matchup zone. The whole intent for me from a 2-2-1 standpoint or from a pressing standpoint is to really make the other team, make the offense have to think. And if you're having to think with less time on the shot clock, it puts us in a better situation. And I don't really want to go too much into detail of what that looks like. But again, as you look at our roster, with the exception of, maybe Nico, maybe Amari, those guys are going to be in the back line of that press. And there's not just a lot of things that they're going to be doing in that press. And I'm comfortable with, the rest of those guys being able to kind of applying that pressure in their positions, with Jared, whether it's Keyshawn, Trey Wood, Darius is fast switch, even Malik for a big, like you can kind of put him in that second line because he is pretty agile, at his position. So you'll see a bunch of different combinations. And we're going to be able to turn it on, and at times we might have to turn it off. It's going to be personnel driven, just based on who we're playing and what I kind of see.
Campus has changed so much. Obviously, you've been busy. You've been to other schools all throughout the country, even the world. What is it like walking campus now, knowing you were a part of necessities to build what we've built? It's like you can almost put a stamp on it, in my opinion. And I'm wondering what you feel, walking campus, seeing Robinson Hall. I didn't even. I was there just for practice. I didn't even know where I was. It's like,
Yeah, no doubt.
so like, what are your thoughts? Like, just kind of having a full spectrum of from Mason.
Yeah, it's been. I still have to give myself like my own personal tour of campus because it's a completely different place. When you have to fill your roster, you have 9 scholarships to fill. There we probably brought, I don't know, 25 plus people on campus, maybe even more than that, maybe 30. And you're giving them this tour of campus, and you're trying to make it look like you know what the hell you're talking about. But this place has been, it's been changed so much. It's grown so much. I'm extremely, extremely excited. I got to find some time to actually kind of get around campus and kind of reteach myself some of these places that, didn't exist when I was here. But, it's also part of the reason why I want this thing to work so much. I wouldn't consider it pressure. I would consider it, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'm also, I'm excited, man. This is home. This is, coming to George Mason was one of the best decisions of my life. And that run that we had in 2006, it's one of those things where even while it was happening, after it happened, it didn't really sink in for me personally, on what it actually meant. Until I got into coaching. You're busy as a pro, you're playing, you're trying to make money, you're trying to elevate. And I was kind of stuck in doing my own thing, and always trying to just reinvent myself after the 2006 run. But once I got into coaching and I got a chance to just be at different places and, valuing different things, that's when it really kicked in for me on how special and how hard it was what we accomplished. And then now, fast forward, being able to be at the helm of it, it's been, I still have, at least a minute or two a day where I'm just like, man, I can't really believe that I'm in this position. And so I'm just proud to be here. I'm excited and looking forward to just what the future holds with this program.
And Coach, we've interviewed, previous coaches, Dave Paulson, Kim English. And one of our favorite questions to ask, before the start of a year is, for me personally, is how will you define success this year? What do you see as a successful season in your first year?
Man, that's a good question, man. I'll say this. It's a different day and age, man. You got to be sharp with your words in all interviews. I don't think that this is a rebuild. I think it's easy to say, oh, it's just year one. I'm not trying to lay the foundation of, it's year one, I need time. I think that we aggressively put together our roster to compete to win. And anytime you have the type of talent that I think we were able to recruit, there's always a chance. That's all you can ask for. How we manage that, how I manage that, rotations in different parts of the game that, we've got to be able to manage. That's something that I'm just going to have to continue to learn. It's a little bit different because it's a different seat. But I've been a part of this basketball thing for a long time. And then looking at my roster, I said this to my team, I think at the end of our first practice, or maybe our last workout before our official practice, I've been a part of some really, really good programs that when you look at, whether it's to depth and being able to play, 5 or 6 guys or, 12 or 13 guys, I've always been a little bit of a pessimist when looking at those rosters. In the last 8 years of me coaching personally, this is the first time that I've looked at my roster, looked at the talent and said, I'm very, very optimistic about my team. So again, not comparing this roster to the 06 team, not comparing it to the previous regime. And, those guys and that team, I'm not, it's a completely different style of play. And so I think for us, man, year one it's going to be an exciting year. I think people are excited to kind of see a little bit of a dose of what they saw when, things were rolling here at George Mason. And so, I'm excited about that. I think that the biggest part of this is as hard as our guys are going to be playing, as hard as they're going to be competing, we want to be able to reward those guys by making sure people are at EBA supporting those guys. There's different components of winning and being a good team. And as good as these guys are, that atmosphere is just as important. So I would say just to flip the question back to you guys, as much support as these guys can get in our arena and our home floor really needs to feel like Patriot pressure more than any other place that we go play.
Yeah, that's our goal. That's why By George started, was to reinvigorate the fan base and the students, and we're going to do that again. We're not going anywhere, and we are excited to cover a Tony Skinn led team. We can't express it enough. Our gratitude for you choosing to come here. We know that you would have other options. We know that that's what you've done. We follow it like sometimes we know the coaches got to probably be like, how these guys know, like where are they getting their info? Because we're on it. And that leads me to my last question about recruiting. And it seems like you guys have had a very strong strategy, and it seems like you have a necessary demeanor to attack recruiting. And I'm curious, we know about our visits, and I'm curious what those visits look like when they come to campus. Are they getting steak dinners out? Are you going to DC, going to Arlington? Is it a stay on campus vibe? Is it all the family together? Are you isolating the kids? Like, what does a Tony Skinn visit look like?
Well, a Tony Skinn visit looks like every kid that steps on campus has a different dynamic. We don't try to put all our visits in one box. We try to be creative. If I've got a kid coming from, Dallas, Texas, that's never been to Washington, D.C., I want to show them what Washington, D.C. looks like as a suburb or right down the road from Fairfax. So maybe we're doing dinner on the first night in D.C. Maybe we're staying in D.C. to just kind of show them around so they don't know the place, and we know how endless the opportunities are in the DMV. And so maybe we're showing that to them for 25% of the visit. We're waking up the next morning and, we're coming on campus. Where it's the real estate on this campus, it's just so much to cover, so much to see. And then we're getting in depth with, the basketball piece. We always start with a presentation that just kind of gives them just kind of the general information on the university, what the scholarship comes with, some of the basketball history, and then we dive into towards the end of the visit the basketball piece, the development piece, both on the court and off the court. But again, what that looks like from a totality of a visit, who's involved as far as our player hosts or our team, it all just really comes down to what we think fits the kid that's on campus. Obviously, we're here to sell George Mason. We're here to sell the program, myself, my staff. But more importantly, it's about the kid on his visit. And I think we've done a pretty good job in just making sure we're identifying and just knowing who the person is that's on campus and the people that are coming with him.
That's awesome perspective. Thank you so much. GMU recruiting on Twitter is always all over it. So if you don't follow them, Mason Nation, go ahead and look up GMU recruiting. Throw them a follow. We didn't touch on NIL. We didn't touch on other things this podcast. We'd love to have you back on in the future. We are extreme fans of yours, and we know it's 9:30 at night right now as we're recording, so you've given us plenty of your time late into the evening. So Tony, thank you so much. We're rooting for you. We'll be at more practices, more games, and tell me, is practice open? Like if fans want to come, is there going to be a fan practice, one that they're going to be able to see, or is there opportunities there?
Yeah, I think there's going to be we're going to have an open practice here coming up shortly. I don't want to, I want to leave things open, but at the same time, I want our guys focused. This is that time of the year where, we just, for me, distractions is everything because we got so much to learn. But we're going to have, I want to say, without looking at the calendar, we're definitely going to have an official open practice. And then there might be another practice or two that we leave a window open for, people to come see us practice as well.
Love that.
I'm getting word October 14th is the open practice date.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
We know everything. Again, we appreciate it, Jones. Thank you. Again, this is Bryan and Jones of By George going into year 9.
I'm psyched. Like, this interview got me so excited. Yeah, and Tony, great interview. You were so real, and just speaking up your squad, your staff, and everything. I think Mason Nation has something to be like really excited for this year. So thank you.
Nah, this has been great, man. Anytime you guys want to have me on, man, this is what it's about. I got to be able to pour into the people that support us, and hopefully that can just be magnified 10 times, man. So I'm all in. Whenever you guys need me, man, I'd love to come jump on with you guys.
All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow then.
9 a.m.
All right, awesome. We'll talk to you soon. Again, this is By George. We're out.